Lesson 2.6, Solving Equations Using Multiplication and Division. How does it work? You have a problem, 4 times x equals 32. So again, this problem started out looking like this. 4 times x equals 32. How do you find x? First of all, you need to use the inverse operations. The inverse of multiplication is division. So we divide the number that's being multiplied, which is 4, divide by 4, and remember to balance the equations by dividing 4 on both sides. Again, what we need to do is take the inverse operation of multiplication, which is division, divide by that number, which is positive 4, and balance the equations by doing it on both sides. When you do that, 4 divided by 4 is 1, so you have just 1 times x, or x. 32 divided by 4 is 8. Ask yourself these questions as you're working through the problems. On which side of the equation is the variable? This is the side I must clear. Always look for the variable. That's where you start. Is there a constant with the variable? Remember, a constant is a number without a variable. Just to give you an example quick, that would be like 2 plus x. The constant would be the 2. Then ask yourself, is there a coefficient? Coefficient is a number that has a variable. So same problem, but let's say there's a 3 next to the x. That's the coefficient. Do I multiply or divide to cancel the coefficient? So let's just review what I just said. If you have a constant, for example, this 2, you would need to add or subtract to cancel the constant. If there's a coefficient, like the 3, you would need to multiply or divide to cancel that coefficient. Here's the division property of equality. Basically, it says that if you divide each side of an equation by the same number, it produces an equivalent equation, meaning it's going to get you the same answer. That's why we balance our equations. So this is 3 times x, divide by 3 to both sides, and you'll get 4. And here's the algebra that tells you that any number will work. Just use the inverse of that number. Inverse operation of that number. Let's look at the example. Negative 7 times x. This is the problem. Here's the variable, and it's a coefficient. Remember, if we have a coefficient, we need to clear it by either multiplying or dividing. In this case, it's going to be dividing. Because it's multiplying, the inverse is divide. We actually divide by that negative 7. I said nothing about the opposite. It's by that negative 7 to both sides. There's your line that separates the sides. This cancels out. You're left with x. 42 divided by negative 7 is negative 6. The solution is negative 6. Remember to always check your answer by plugging that back into the x. And what is negative 7 times negative 6? 42, so the solution checks. Before you pause the video, ask yourself the question, what is the inverse operation? And make sure you use that inverse operation on both sides of the equation. Pause the video at this time and find the answer to the variables. Number 1, this is 5 times x, so I need to get rid of the 5 by dividing by 5 to both sides. That crosses off. You're left with x. 45 divided by 5 is 9. You can always check it because 5 times 9 is 45. Number 2, here's the variable, this time on the right side. So we need to clear the negative 8. divide by negative 8, because that's the inverse of the opposite operation of multiplication. Negative 56 divided by negative 8. Two negatives make a positive 7. And you can check negative 8 times positive 7 is 56, and different signs make negative. The multiplication property of equality says multiplying each side of an equation by the same non-zero number produces an equivalent equation. So this time we have a variable, we divide, that's what the fraction bar means, by 3. Well, to get rid of the dividing by 3, we would multiply by 3 to both sides. 12 times 3 is 36. Example 2. First, two sides of the problem. Actually, let me go down to the solution. Here's the variable. So we're dividing by 11. The inverse of dividing by 11 is multiplying by 11. So I'm going to multiply 11 to each side of the equation. What happens is these 11s cancel out. And 11 times 5 is 55. If you want to see why they cancel, it's because W over 11 is actually equal to 1W over 11, which is technically 1/11th times W. That being said, when I multiply by 11, which is like 11 over 1, 11 times 1 is 11, and 1 times 11 is 11, and 11 divided by 11 is 1. So that's why they cancel out, because they actually equal 1, which is just 1W, which you don't need. At this point, please pause the video and solve the equation. Remember to do the inverse operation, not the opposite of the number, just the inverse operation. Number 3, it is m divided by 4. That's the variable side, so we look at that side. We need to move the dividing by 4 by multiplying by 4 to both sides. Get rid of the 4's. This is m equals 11 times 4 is 44. Number 4, the variable is on the right side. We're dividing by 6, so I multiply by 6. Negative 9 times 6 is negative 54. Remember this tip. When a variable has a negative coefficient, you must divide each side using the negative sign. Here was the original problem. Negative 3n equals 9. It's a negative coefficient, so you divide by that negative sign. That will cancel out, and 9 divided by negative 3 is negative 3. If it's positive, you divide by the positive to both sides, and will equal positive 3. They are two different answers, so make sure you check your work.